So I am Arjun Bhat. I curate travel experiences for a living. Now, hopefully, towards the end of this talk, we'll all know what kind of travel experiences am I talking about, and a little more understanding of what that means. For now, I'd like to talk to you about pleasures of traveling and what that means to me and how, through my work, I'm trying to spread that joy and pleasure. Let's start with a question. This was a question asked by a gentleman called Robin S. Rock, who's a TV host and a travel writer. A simple question says, complete the sentence, I regret dash. Now, more than 1700 participants from 46 countries responded with various backgrounds. Someone said, I regret not being more successful in life. Someone said, I regret not owning a nicer car. But the overwhelming majority of people responded by saying, I regret not traveling more often. Now, this is a fascinating answer, and I wanted to probe this further. So, I asked another question. This was a separate survey that we ran, and this question was simple. Do you wish to travel more often than you currently do? And the answer isn't surprising. 86% of the respondents said, yes, we want to travel more often than we currently do. But I wanted to know more about these people. Who are these people? What influences them? So we asked a number of other questions within that survey. So this was one of the questions. How often do you currently travel in a calendar year, right? And here's the distribution. You can see most people travel 3 to 4 times a year. But there were still significant number of people who traveled 9 to 10 times or 11 times or more. Now, I wish my life was like that. Conventional wisdom tells us that people who travel that often may not necessarily want to travel more. But we were wrong there again. Because irrespective of how often they traveled, people still wanted to travel more. And we checked this across different lines, whether it is gender, nationality, how often they traveled, how they traveled. Did they travel solo or did they travel with family or friends? Irrespective of any of these variables, people wanted to travel more often. So what is it? What is it about us, the human species, that makes us want to travel more often? Is this something new, or is this something we've been always doing through history, through time? Let's look at some travelers, who've taken up journeys before us, right? Whether it's the early humans who migrated out of Africa into Asia, Europe, and inhabited rest of the planets, or people from early river valley civilizations like Mesopotamia or early Harappa, who found each other, established trade, who standardized measurements, or pilgrims in India. For last 3,000 years, people have been visiting Varanasi. People have been visiting Jerusalem. People have been visiting Mecca. Or look at the European explorers from the discovery era who found sea routes to go and establish and change the world completely because of those travels. Throughout our time in history, people have used travel to overcome their limitations and learn from each other. Lot of things like spread of religion, spread of idea, exchange of ideas, none of this would have been possible if it were not for people who had taken these travels before us. So collectively, as a race, as people on this planet, we've grown from these travels, that people who took these travels before us. And me and you, being part of this planet, have also been affected indirectly. So the question is, have I been impacted, or have I grown personally, individually, from my own travel experiences? So I want to talk about some of these travel experiences that have changed me as an individual. To do that, I need to tell you 2 stories. The first one is when I was young. I was 10 years old, growing up in a small town, Udupi, in the coastal town on the western coast of India. How many of you know Udupi? Okay, a lot of you do. Now, when I was growing up there and I was 10 years old, there was very limited connectivity. There was no railway station. You had to take buses everywhere. One summer morning, my dad asked me to pack my bag up and says, go visit your uncle. Now my uncle stays in a farm with his family in the middle of a forest in the foothills of Western Ghats. It is around 130 kilometers away. To get there is not easy. I have to take a bus out 90 kilometers to a town called Ujire. There I had to get into a very specific jeep that would take me to a village 15 kilometers out. And then I had to walk for another 4 to 5 kilometers to get to my uncle's. Now, this might not seem a lot, but for a 10-year-old, this was a lot. I was a curious kid, so I did it. And I ended up staying there for a month. And it was some of the most memorable experiences of my childhood. I learned how to milk a cow. I learned how to climb a tree for the very first time. I learned where the fruits and vegetables in the farm came from. I learned that you could make biogas from dung. I learned how to swim in a stream. My uncle, he made us floats from dried coconuts, which we'd put under our armpits, tie them together and swim in the river. I used to ask a lot of questions, and the laborers in the farm, they were very kind to me. They would answer my non-stop questions. Once in a while, I would walk a couple of kilometers to a neighboring village to play cricket with the students there. These early travels taught me a lot. I really appreciated and respected the work done by people who were less fortunate than me. These laborers, I remembered them as very nice people. They worked really, really hard to provide for themselves and their family. But we had a certain connection when I interacted with them. The students I loved playing cricket with, most of them lived in thatched huts with no electricity and a little chula cooking food in their house. There was such a difference between us, but none of that mattered at the playground when we played cricket together. And this is one of the things travel teaches you. It teaches you empathy, to put yourself in someone else's shoes and appreciate them for what they are. Another thing I remember from this early trip is that I felt a sense of accomplishment. I felt pride that I was able to walk. I was able to go to my uncle's on my own. I did a lot of things for the very first time, like milking a cow. I wouldn't stop bragging about that for months. But none of that would have been possible if I had stayed home and not gone on that trip. I didn't realize what this feeling was back then, but years and years of traveling has conditioned. Now I know what that feeling was. Travel pushes you out of your comfort zone. And when you're pushed out of your comfort zone, you're more open to try new things. Now, pushing yourself or getting yourself out of comfort zone means doing things that you wouldn't normally do. So asking a girl on a date, or bungee jumping, or trying something ridiculous looking local food for the very first time, all of these things are pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Pushing yourself of comfort zone is an important life skill that you have to learn, and travel gives you the right opportunity to do that. Fast forward a few years, I've grown up, I've finished college, and I had a chance to take up a job in Noida. Noida is in North India, very close to the national capital region. Now, I'd never traveled outside 200 kilometers of my hometown for most of my childhood. So for me, going to North India was very new. And I had a lot of ideas about what North India would be like because I was ignorant. I had imagined that food in North India would all be garam masala. It would have either aloo or paneer, nothing else. I thought North Indians in general were very loud, very aggressive, very intrusive. Now, one of the first travels I took while I was in Delhi, Noida, was to my friend's house in Bareilly in Uttar Pradesh. They had invited me over to celebrate Holi with them. I had never celebrated Holi before. And my friend had warned me. He told me, you better have a pair of clothes that you're ready to throw away. I was like, what are you talking about? This was me that day, on the right. So I go to this, home in Bareilly, and we are stepping out of the house, and I notice there are a bunch of youngsters who have made this contraption out of a wheeled cart. On top of this wheeled cart, they have put a Syntex tank full of colored water. And they have attached a pump, and they are spraying colored water, pressurized colored water at anyone who's anywhere close, within 30 feet range. Behind that cart, there was another cart which had loudspeakers blaring Bollywood song like Rang Barse Bhige Chunar Wali Rang Barse. I had never experienced celebration like this. It turned into an impromptu dance party and a procession. We went from house to house, pulled people out, colored each other, hugged, exchanged sweets. I had never experienced anything like this before. I had seen it in movies, but I never believed this existed. People can celebrate a festival with such uninhibited enthusiasm, with so much joy. The family that hosted me, they were lovely. They took me as one of their own. They didn't treat me as a guest. I knew this because after Holi, what happens is all of the place is colored. The walls, every crevice you can imagine has colors. And my dad's father, my friend's dad, he asked me to clean his car up for him. So that's when I knew that I wasn't a guest anymore. I was part of their family. The family also fed me a lot of great food. There were so many different varieties of mango pickle I was trying. Oh my God, I was obsessed. Different curries with vegetables that I'd never even heard names of. And towards the end of this trip, I felt a little small. I felt really sad that here I'd come with different ideas about what North India would be like. And all my preconceived notions about what it would be like were shattered. That's one of the things that travel does to you. It breaks your preconceived notions. Basically cures ignorance, right? Another thing I started noticing from that trip onwards was that when you travel and you see, you can observe differences in different cultures. And I was not used to celebrating festivals like I had just seen. So I took a keen interest. In all my travels after that, I would observe how people celebrate, how people cook a certain type of food. And I started really appreciating differences in cultures. And what this did was not only that I learned about a lot of different cultures, I started appreciating the uniqueness of my own culture. Because when you know so much about different cultures, you'll start appreciating how your culture is different. So that is the last lesson, appreciation of uniqueness of culture. Now, all of these lessons that you learn, this is what the greatest pleasure of travel is to me. It is in the learning. It is in all the things that travel teaches you. So, I had learnt a lot from my travels, and I have been traveling, since a young age. And I was craving for a way to actually spread that joy and spread that knowledge. And fortunately for me, I had an opportunity to co-found the company Travspire, like these people introduced and said. Now, Travspire curates unique travel experiences and local travel experiences. But what has it anything to do with the kind of learning we talked about? Well, we take a lot of attention, we pay a lot of attention in curating travel experiences where you are given the right opportunity and the right environment to observe, engage, and learn from the experience. It takes a lot of planning to do that, but there is a lot of spontaneity in experiencing something like that as well. We go to any destinations, we look, what is unique about this place? Is it the ecology? Is it the wildlife? Is it the cuisine? What is it? Whatever is it, we will try and curate that into an experience and execute it in a manner that is authentic so that you can experience it like a local does. To demonstrate this, I want to talk about one particular experience, right? Now, a lot of you might have gone to the backwaters of Kerala, yes? So backwaters of Kerala is a stunning place, in India. And most people go there, they stay in houseboats overnight and then come back. How many of you did that, houseboats? Yeah. You go on a houseboat, cruise overnight, it is beautiful, most relaxing vacation ever. But what do you know about backwaters after that trip? Nothing. So this is what we were trying to do. Right? Because backwaters is 900 kilometers of navigable waterway. Complex web of canals, waterways, inlets, lakes, lagoons. And the life there is completely different from anywhere else in India because people rely on the backwaters for sustenance, for transportation, to get around. It's such an integral part of their lives. So how do you understand this life better? That's what we were going for. So we curated an experience where you would be taken to a remote part of the backwaters, to a small homestay overlooking a lake. There we would all start cycling. Cycling is a common way of getting around the backwaters, other than boats, of course. And so you will cycle for around 5 to 10 kilometers, and on your way you will stop at different places. A mussel farming place, a coir making women's cooperative, and a toddy shop. Now, these places you go so that you get a better understanding of what livelihood there is in that area, right? How do they make money? How much do they earn? How do they take their product to the market? All of these things you get to learn. Now, toddy, for those of you who don't know, is a fermented beverage which is very popular in the backwaters. And it's a very essential part of the culture in the backwaters. Once you've done this, then you cycle along and reach the local fishing harbor, which is a beautiful beach with boats that are hauling the day's fresh catch of fish into trucks all over South India. In some cases, some of this fish will go to cosmetic factories. You see and you learn all of these things. And then you take a walk 500 meters through this fisherman's settlement and come to a boat that is waiting for you on the edge of canal. And you sit on this boat, and then this boat takes you back to the same homestay where you started, but this time through the different waterways and canals and lakes and lagoons. And while you are floating in a non-mechanized canoe, which is rowed by fishermen, you observe the life very closely, because these are canals the houseboats can never go into. So you get to see a much more intimate view of what backwaters is like. And once you reach the homestay, you are fed some delicious homemade local food, which has specialities like curry mean, which is a specialty from the backwaters, or tapioca, or the mussels which we brought from the family that we visited. So in all, if you look at this experience, it's very unique because you can't do something like this on your own. It is very local because it is executed in an authentic manner. But it gives you so much opportunity to observe things around you, engage with the people you are meeting, and learn from that experience. Now I want to talk, this is some of the testimonials that people wrote based on this experience. Now I want to talk to you about one more experience that we did and curated. This was very specific. And the goal was to engage students like yourself in history, in heritage, and in culture of this country. To spark an interest in history. Because history is very difficult, because you read it. There is no way of engaging with history, right? So we did this trip to Hampi, which was a 3-day trip. And in this 3-day trip, there was a lot of different things we did in the Hampi. We learnt about the architecture, we learnt about history of Vijayanagara, we learnt about how rural people are essential part of that heritage site and how they contribute in preservation. But one activity I want to specifically talk to you about, which was mock excavation. Never been done before anywhere in India. We created this tour where people, students got to become archaeologists for a day. They had the equipment, they had the know-how, and they had to find different items in the pits of their respective teams. Once they found different items, they were taught the process to clean and display them. And they had to write essays and do a presentation based on the items that they found. So they had to write a story essentially, based on the items they found, who lived there, what did they do, what was their livelihood like, what was agriculture like, what were the cultural practices like. You can see here 4 different ones. You can see a kitchen, you can see a prayer room, and a farmer's shed. This is some reaction some of the students and the staff who attended the tour gave. Now these are only 2 examples I've given. There are plenty of examples. Essentially, at Travspire, we want you to travel, not be a tourist. We want you to immerse yourself in these travel experiences, not just visit them for sake of visiting. And we want you to observe, engage, and learn from these experiences. To end, I will end with this quote. Travel is the greatest teacher in this classroom of life. So travel often and travel to learn. Thank you.